Good morning, Ryan. Oh, I have two Ryans on there. Well, only one now, but two with the class. Okay. Good morning, Ryan Maxine. All right. So let me put it out there. So the I know that first, especially because my internet was so shitty last week. Oh my goodness. All right. I got better internet today. All right. I do. Okay. So what was supposed to have been done by last night was three separate things. Okay. That is where am I? I got one here. This one. If you recall, there was three things that were supposed to have been done, and I understand we had a lot of late ads and etc. The Introduce Yourself forum was supposed to have been done last night. The Chapter 1 discussion forum was supposed to have been done last night. And then the pre-test, if you wanted extra credit, was supposed to have been done last night. Okay. And I got some of them from you. Most of you did the Introduce Yourself forum. Um, and then I got a handful of chapter ones, and the pre-test about half of you or something like that. So I had a lot of late ads that, last week, Thursday, when we had our first class, I think we had 19 students, and now we have 25. So clearly there was a influx of people that did not sit around. So I'm opening these up. So now this morning, I did in fact grade this one. I put a grade on this one based on what was in there. And let's see, it was out of 15 points maximum. So if you didn't get 15 points, I recommend you go in there, figure out why you didn't get 15 points, because I put a little feedback on it, and fix them. Tomorrow morning, I will go in tomorrow. I'm setting these up tonight, all right, because I want everybody to start strong, especially those people that are late ads. I mean, it's a lot of confusion, a lot of crap. So I opened all three of these for tonight. Okay, these three until tonight, and then after that, then they're gone for gone. Okay, so I put a bunch of zeros in the grade book for now, just to sort of, holy shit, because students hate zeros. Okay, so do something, and we'll get rid of those things. But tonight by midnight, that's when these things are now gone. Okay, so I was happy to read the forums, but I found that most people did not, in fact, reply to a classmate. And if you don't reply to a classmate, then it's not really a discussion forum, right? Because that's the word. All right. Some of you did, but most of you didn't. Okay. So I opened them up. I will regrade everything tomorrow. If you think that you don't like the number that you got on there because it's less than 15, go for it. Okay. Check out my feedback. Remember that there is, in fact, where am I? Yeah, just pull it up here so we're all clear about where things are. Remember, there is in here assignments and rubrics. There is, in particular, good and bad examples, so that you can see what a good one might look like and what a crappy one might look like. Okay, so it gives you an idea of what kind of things you're looking for. Right, this is definitely 15 points. This is, I don't want to, this is more than you need, shall we say. All right, this is more than we need, but definitely this is not cutting it. This is like a point. All right, 1 out of 15. I don't think that's what you want to get. Okay, and so as we said, then in the discussion board, so check out what you got. You don't like it, take care of it. I have not graded this one at all because there was less than half of y'all did something in here. So I want to, well, it says total participants 20. Maybe there is more. Huh? I didn't totally look. Okay. So yeah, I guess there's 25 people in the class, so that tells you how many. It's not bad. Okay, not bad. Um, but also, as one other thing, if you recall, is in here, exams and quizzes, is this pre-test that you can take that is extra credit. It doesn't take very long. I mean, those of you that took it, how long did this take?
About like 15, 20, 15 minutes, really. 10.
15 minutes, yeah. Because I mean, you're not expected to know the answers. So I don't know. I mean, yeah, 14 minutes. There you go. Very specific. 14.375 minutes. Okay, perfect. So it's not, you're not supposed to know the answers. So it shouldn't take all that long. So if you haven't done it and you want to get some extra credit to get this semester up and running, there it is. And so midnight tonight, these three separate things will be gone, but all three are available until midnight. So I want a good start to the semester. I don't want people walking in with a bunch of zeros. That's crappy or even ugh. Okay. So, questions on that kind of a thing before we move on and start to actually learn psychology a little bit? Y'all ready to learn some psych? Maybe? I don't know. Nicole's ready for psych, I bet. So, actually, you know what I wanted to point out first here? Let me do this. I forgot. I wanted to put. Okay. So in the first unit, we're going to have, you know, the first for the first exam, there's going to be these four topics, okay? And I'm just going to give you a, you know, a little bit of warning right now that you need to be patient with me. All right, you got to promise to be patient because I'm going to tell you, I will do my best because you know I love this stuff. But these two topics for sure are not that exciting. Okay, and so it may be a snooze fest. All right, maybe not going to. I'm going to try to be woo woo woo. You know, get going. But it is not the most exciting material in the world. It's necessary material, but it's not the most exciting material. This third chapter, maybe you like it, maybe you don't. I don't know. Okay, I think it's awesome. I mean, how can you possibly talk about human beings without understanding their brains? Okay. But by the time we get to topic or chapter 4 here, it gets awesome. All right. And then it just goes up from there. Okay. So you got to have patience with me. And don't you be judging this course based on the first two because they're necessary, but they're not that cool. All right. They're just, I'll do what I can with it. Okay. But it is what it is. Okay. So I'm holding you to that. All right. Be patient with me. All right. So today we're going to start up with this notion of introducing psychology, kind of let's figure out what is psychology, right? Where does it come from? Because it didn't just spring out of nowhere. It's a relatively new discipline, but it had to come from somebody. And then it's kind of like, what does psychology look like today? All right, where are we at? So, as some kind of a definition to start, psychology is the scientific study of mind and behavior. Scientific. All right. Nice. So look at that. I love that. Okay. I know when some students signed up for psychology, if they're thinking therapy and counseling and may I help you, Dr. Phil is not what psychology is about at all. Okay. What he says and does not represent psychology, especially scientific psychology. You know what he represents? He represents the almighty dollar. What can I say, write, or do that will make people tune into my television program or buy my book? All right. It's got nothing to do with science, nothing to do with facts, nothing to do with helping people. It's all ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. All right. So, gone, Dr. Phil. Okay. I wonder if he's actually a doctor. To be honest, I don't even know. Yeah. So, psychology comes from the Greek word psyche, which means soul, and ology, which would mean the scientific study of. So technically, it's a scientific study of the soul. Clearly, that's not really what we are, okay? The scientific study of the mind and human behavior and behavior. I am a behaviorist. All right. We're going to talk about different areas of psychology and whatnot. But as a behaviorist, I am interested in uh, behavior, quantifiable behavior. Okay, so I'll come back on that one. So here it is. Some of you might be psych majors. I just got to put it out there. Why is psych so cool? It's so cool. In my opinion, that psychology is the central discipline in academics. There is no discipline that is not at its core psychology. Okay, there is none. Everything is psychology. If you want to be a teacher, you darn well better know psychology. If you want to be in business, you darn well better know psychology. You want to go into law, you gotta know people. If you don't know people, you will not be a successful lawyer or business person or educator or human resource professional. I don't care what discipline you're talking about. Everything is at its core psychology. Okay. Even something you go out there, oh, what about accounting? Accounting isn't psychology. Yes, it is, because all the numbers on those pages on an accountant represent human activity, human interest, human needs, human desires. Yeah, but it's accounting. Yeah, but it's all psychology. In my, I'm biased. Okay, I'm biased, but hopefully you can come to agree with me by the time we get to the end that ultimately psychology is the central core of every other discipline. Okay. In psychology, we emphasize critical thinking skills. We emphasize the scientific method. In fact, at one point, I had this job interview. All right. I had just finished my PhD and I got a job interview down at the University of Texas Health Science Center down in Houston. And it was in neuroscience, and it was really intense neuroscience. And I remember at this interview, this guy wanted me bad. He really wanted me to take that job. And and I'm there, and I'm like, I have really no training in neuroscience. I have a single graduate course in biological psychology. Just this little bit. He goes, yeah, but you know what? You have been trained in psychology with the critical thinking skills, with the scientific background. He says, I can add the neuroscience on top of that in a month. Okay. All I need is 1 month to drop neuroscience on top of the training that you have. And I was impressed with this guy's rationale. And I didn't take the job, by the way, because it scared the bejesus out of me. It involved, this is awesome. It involved taking convicted violent offenders that are now out on parole. Okay, so these are men that have been convicted of violent crime and are now paroled. And what you do is you bring them into a laboratory and you put on a brain scan device to measure brain activity. And then you make them high. Okay, you give them marijuana to make them high, and then you have them play a video game. They're playing a game, and in this game they earn points, and later on they take the points and they turn them into money. Okay, so these guys are invested in this game, and then at one point they set it up so that the machine would jam up. What happens to the brain scan of a convicted violent offender that is high when he gets frustrated? Oh my God. I remember asking, haven't you had problems here? Hasn't there been violence or something? He goes, well, only once. And well, the cops got here pretty quick. And I'm like, I don't know about that. I think I better be careful. Okay. So it was a pretty cool job, but very interesting. Okay. So anyway, psychology, a degree in psychology, you're going to find that psychology majors do in fact become medical doctors, they become lawyers, they become whatever the occupation is. You're going to find that psych majors are at the core. You really will. Okay. So what do we know? Okay. In the world, there are different ways of knowing things. Okay. One way that we know things is religion. We take things on faith and we believe it's true, and therefore it's true. It's one way of knowing things. Okay. Another way of knowing things is philosophy. Okay, you talk about them, you think about them. Okay, that's a. And a third way of knowing things is science. Okay. So it's just three different ways of knowing things. And it turns out that science is a way of knowing things, a way of knowledge that is based on objective measurements. Okay. That is, and as opposed to subjective, right? Objective, empirical. That is, it is based on seeing it, to physically see it, not to turn inside yourself and say, what is the nature of the universe? No, 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 no. In science, you look at things. Okay. You look at things that can be verified by somebody else. Because if I study the nature of the universe by turning inside myself and looking towards, I can't verify that, right? I mean, you can't. Has to be systematic manipulation. We'll talk more about that in the next chapter. And control. And again, next chapter stuff. Okay? So here we go. The history of psychology. So here we've got a couple of interesting early psychologists. You've got Wilhelm Wundt, who is the first psychologist, or the father of psychology, if you will. Okay. But here we find that the questions that psychologists are interested in have been asked for thousands of years. I mean, the same questions are still around. Okay. What is the nature of truth and knowledge? And, it's all been around. But it is only in the last 150 years or so that science has been applied to ask those questions that the philosophers have been asking. Okay. And so you find some of the simplest questions, is the mind the same as the body? So the laws that describe how my pen falls, is that the same laws that describe how my mind works? Okay. Or is this like a totally different realm? Okay. Or are ideas, when a child is born, are they born with ideas already in there, or is it something where children are born with nothing? Okay. Where does it come from? And so we'll, over and over and over, we're going to have some of these questions. I mean, this is Plato versus Aristotle. I mean, this is, 3,000 years old, and yet it's still at the top of our questions. Huh? So Plato and Aristotle were two of the earliest philosophers. And it turns out that Plato was Aristotle's teacher, but they are worlds apart. And so they had different philosophical views on how to learn the truth. And so Plato really said, you know what? If you want to know truth, you need to turn inside yourself and find the answer. Because here on earth, all you find is imperfection. The only way that you can find truth is to search your soul, because your soul, before you were born, your soul was in heaven and your soul lived with truth. And so if you want to know truth, you turn inside your soul and look. So find a simple question. Are you ready? What is a dog? What is a dog? And so Plato says, you could look around you and I got two dogs, okay? I got a black dog that's about that big, and I got a white dog that's about that big, okay? So one's black, one's white, one's this big, one's this big. Okay. One's this long, one's this long. Okay. One's stupid, one's smart. Okay. So what the hell's a dog? And so Plato says you could never discover what a dog is by looking at dogs, because they're all different from each other. Okay. But in the heaven, there is a truth of a dog. So you want to know anything? That's what you got to do. Aristotle says, okay, no. If you want to know what a dog is, you ought to go study 100 dogs. No, 1,000, better, 1,000,000 dogs. You look at as many dogs as you possibly can and find out what they have in common. Somehow the average of 1,000 dogs equals what a dog is. Okay. Or in other words, Plato was saying, if you want to search for the truth, turn inside yourself. Aristotle says, if you want to know the truth, look at the world in front of you. Okay. Turn inside, look. And this is a major break in philosophy that exists to this day. Okay. We find John Locke took after Aristotle, and he basically said, When a baby is born, their brain is empty. There's nothing in it. Every single thing that is in a baby's brain is the result of experiences that they have here on earth. There is no other place to gain knowledge. Everything comes from here. Okay? Immanuel Kant was the exact opposite. And he said, when a baby is born, they already have so much knowledge of the universe already inside of them. Okay? So if you want to seek the truth, look around you. That's how you gain knowledge. If you want to find the truth, turn inside yourself. You already have the knowledge. Okay? So pretty big distinction there. So what happened is at one point in 1510, I just saw it on somewhere else. That's what I remember. But Francis Bacon, all right, he is an English politician, and he keeps up with the debate between empiricism and rationalism, these two major philosophies about how we should learn about truth, right? Look at the world, turn inside yourself. And he says, you know what? I think I could create this thing that might take these two and bring them together. And so what he did was he created science, right? And with science, what happens is you use rationalism, you turn inside yourself to generate theories. You create these theories, and based on the theories, you create hypotheses. And again, chapter 2 will have more details. The theories lead to hypotheses. Hypotheses leads to empirical observations. We measure things, and once we measure them, we find out whether or not they support a theory. So we use rationalism to generate theories. We use empiricism to gather data to test those theories. Okay? So it's really kind of cool when Francis Bacon invented science. So he introduces science to the world, and people are like, what is this thing you have here? Is this a religion you've given us? No, this is not a religion. Is this another kind of philosophy? No, it's not a philosophy. It's a whole new way of gaining knowledge. It's like, pretty cool. Pretty cool. So psychology is science, period. It is. We use the scientific method. We have quantifiable observations. I did my entire dissertation. My dissertation work, well, I mean, part of it was with pigeons. Pigeons. And you know what I measured? Pecking behavior. They peck at little discs and keys. That's it. Okay. I am measuring quantifiable behavior. I am not trying to turn inside yourself and discover that. No. We find that psychology has roots in philosophy. Wilhelm Wundt, who's our founding father, was a philosopher. He was not a scientist by training. He was not a psychologist in any way, shape, or form. Charles Darwin is huge in psychology. Oh my God, is he an important part of psychology? He's a naturalist. He's not a psychologist. Ivan Pavlov, we'll come to Pavlov. Pavlov wins the Nobel Prize in physiology for digestion before he even is anything to do with psychology. Sigmund Freud was a medical doctor. He was a physician, a neurologist studying, the nerves and the nervous system. He wasn't a psychologist. So what the heck is this thing that we have here? And as I said, I believe psychology is at the center of all disciplines because it arose from all the disciplines coming together. Okay, very cool. I like it. So earliest stage psychology, science of mental life, yada yada yada. Wilhelm Wundt was he was the father of psychology because at the University of Leipzig in Germany, he created the very first psychological laboratory to do research in psychology, very rigid experimental research. And so I have a lot of respect for Wilhelm Wundt. He was he was a good scientist. He was a good scientist, and he gave a lot of respectability to psychology. And he had a lot of students. And it turns out that though he himself was a philosopher by training, his students were awarded their doctoral degrees in psychology. So he's the father of psychology in the sense that he had the very first research lab, and also in the sense that he's the first one to train an actual psychologist. Okay, so very cool idea. One of his students, okay, this is Edward Titchener, and Edward Titchener was British. Edward Titchener was British. He got his bachelor's degree from Oxford, and he is a stuck-up bastard. He is British. I'm British. I'm better than you. I went to Oxford. It's like, right? And he goes to Germany and he studies with Wilhelm Wundt, and he finishes his degree with Wundt. So he's now a doctor. He's got a doctorate. And so he's looking for a job. He's looking for employment, and Oxford gives him an offer, right? This guy's like, oh my God, I can go back to Oxford. Wow. Okay. But at Oxford, the only thing he was going to do was teach, only teaching. But then there's this new university in America, the University of Rochester in New York. Okay. And they offer him a job where he can do research. And he's like, he gives up going to his prestigious Oxford to go to New York just because they gave him the ability to research. Now, what he did was he comes to America and he translates the German work that Wilhelm Wundt had written, and he translates it to English, but he translates it not accurately. He translates it in a way that fits what he wants it to say. Okay. And so this was a big deception. People didn't really realize for a long time that he had changed Wundt to fit what he desired. Okay. And what he wanted to do, and I mean, look at this. This is Edward Titchener. He is an SOB. All right. He is the most important person in the history of psychology. And the reason he's important is he's so shitty. He does the job so bad. He pisses off so many people that every person after him goes, we can do better. We are a science. And what you have done, Titchener, has just dropped us into the gutter. So here's what Titchener does. He brings and he brought the some ideas from Wundt, and the idea was he believed that psychology's job was to uncover the structure of the mind. Okay, so in the same kind of a way that you would go to chemistry and you would say every single object, right, is composed of some chemical elements. You can break down this pen into the chemical elements that make it up. And I'm sure there's some carbon in there, right? And some hydrogen in there, probably. Yeah, there's hydrogen in there. And there's, I don't know, because I'm not a chemist. But you could break it down into its fundamental chemical elements. And Titchener felt that the goal of psychology was to break down consciousness into its elements or structure, okay? Into its structure, its basic, smallest components. So here's how he does research, okay? And I'm going to use the research very generously. He goes like this. Okay, now what I want you to do is take this apple. You have to imagine the apple, right? Take the apple and I want you to turn inside yourself. Think Plato, right? Turn inside yourself and discover the truth of this apple. So what is the apple? And oh, it's shiny and it's red and it's smooth. Ha! Great, says Titchener. I got 3 elements of consciousness: shiny, red, smooth. Sweet. Okay. In the same way, you got hydrogen, carbon, oxygen. Sweet. We got 3. Now, what happens is that somebody else would pick up that apple, and I want you to introspect on the apple. Oh, it's rounded and smooth and spotty. Rounded and smooth and spotty. Okay, so I've got three more elements of consciousness, elements of the mind. Well, in the world of science, the truth should not depend on the observer. Okay, if you're in real science, go over to chemistry or something, and the truth of what's in the petri dishes is not dependent upon the person that is looking at the petri dishes. The truth is in the dish, not in the human being. Okay, it's shit. It's not quantitative, it's not observable. I mean, you can't verify somebody's observations when one person looks and another person looks. And yet, this is what he obsessively does for like 30 years. For 30 years, he's obsessing on making a catalog. And he comes up with like 35,000 elements of visual consciousness and like 10,000 elements of hearing. What an idiot, okay? And he's the whole time smiling and claiming he's a scientist. That is not science, okay? That is crap. So, one of the people that might look at Titchener and say, you suck, would have been William James. Now, William James actually did study with Wundt as well, and James came back to America with his degree. William James is the brother of Henry James, a famous author. The entire family was mega rich and mega famous, okay? Well, he's basically the guy that says, okay, here's what you're doing, okay, idiot. Imagine that you want to study a monkey. And so what you do is, according to Titchener, you break down the monkey into its fundamental structure. Okay. So let's look at the fur on the monkey. Oh God, I'm going to start to count the fur on the tail. And there's this many fur, and some is tall, and some is short, and some is gray, and some is brown. And oh my God. And I found along comes somebody like William James, and he goes, dude, you're an idiot. Okay, all of that crap that you've just done to catalog the hair on the monkey's tail tells us nothing. If you want to know something about the tail of that monkey, figure out what its function is. What is the function of the tail? William James was heavily influenced by Charles Darwin's evolutionary thinking, and we're gonna spend some time on that in this chapter a little bit, not a lot, just not much. But the idea is Charles Darwin taught the world that we are the product, or all animals are the product of many years of selection. If you look at a part of an animal's body, such as a monkey's tail, okay, the existence of that monkey's tail is the result of the fact that in some way or another, that tail allowed the monkey to adapt to its environment. How? Perhaps by making sure the monkey doesn't fall out of a tree, right? So it uses its tail to hold itself in place. Nice. You found the purpose, you found the function. By simply finding the function of the tail, you have learned 1,000 times more than cataloging the hair on the tail. Okay. You just learn nothing by cataloging hair. You learn everything by perceiving the function. And so, given this idea that this function is what is important, so instead of cataloging the elements of consciousness, figure out what the conscious mind and cognitive structures are used for. What purpose do they have? What function do they have? Okay. So it's a powerful, powerful manifestation of evolutionary thinking in psychology. And this is a very powerful, there's a whole discipline of psychology to this day called evolutionary psychology, where we look at the influence of evolution on behavior. Okay, it's powerful. I come back to those multiple times. That pops up all over the place. Okay? Another area of psychology, which I'm not a big fan of, is Sigmund Freud and psychoanalysis. Okay, now Sigmund Freud was a physician. He was actually a clinical researcher. All right. He was a clinical researcher studying the physiology of eels. Believe it or not, eels are long animals. And his specialization was understanding eel testicles. All right. The testicles of an eel. Can you believe that? That was his job. He loved to study about eel testicles. Well, then what happens is he meets a woman and she's like, yeah, I love you, baby. Let's get married. But, a person researching eel testicles doesn't make very much money. I think you ought to go make some money. So Sigmund Freud says, okay, I love you. I'm going to go out and get a real job. So he goes out and becomes a neurologist, right? So he's a physician working with and nerves and nerve damage and things like this. And he's got some patients that come in, and these patients are reporting what they call glove, I don't know, but you can't feel the entire hand, right? They're reporting, look, I just have loss of feeling starting at the wrist and just gone. And so as a physiologist, as a neurologist, Sigmund Freud knew there was nothing, there was absolutely no explanation that could be given to explain how you just lose feeling in your entire hand. There is no damage that could occur. There's no way that can happen. And so he comes to realize that notion, glove anesthesia, whatever, must be a product of the mind. So the mind can influence the body. And so Sigmund Freud becomes very famous. And we're going to talk about Sigmund Freud in a lot of ways. And Sigmund Freud was a powerful figure. He had some very firm ideas. He did not allow anybody to question his authority in any way, shape, or form. He is a very important player in psychology. He's probably the most famous psychologist, unfortunately. Unfortunately. And so Sigmund Freud did a lot of shitty stuff, and I will come back to why I dislike Freud, but I just thought I'd give you a little shout out there. There I went to the Sigmund Freud Museum in Vienna, Austria. Okay, I was in Vienna, and I had an opportunity, but you know what? I'm not going to pay money to go into the Sigmund Freud Museum. Forget that. I hiked for almost an hour across the city of Vienna to get to this museum just so that I could take this picture. Right? Up yours, Freud. I don't want anything to do with you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right. So powerful idea. All right. So now what happens is now there was other researchers, in particular people like John Watson, who come out and say, you know, you are really shitty. And the reason that you're crappy is you're not a scientist. In order for research to be science, the data must be publicly observable. It must be repeatable. It must be verifiable. It must be quantifiable. None of that. None of that is coming out of you, Titchener. None of it. And so what happens is pretty interesting. Is John Watson is developing this idea that the only thing that should be studied in psychology is behavior, nothing else, only external behavior, because the behavior of an animal or a person can be observed, it can be verified by a second observer, it can be quantified. Okay, it's got what you need to be scientific observations. Therefore, for a behaviorist, you say, all right, and I have very strong behavioral training. My research lab was very behavioral. So if you want to really piss off your advisor, you go like this. You say, the dog wagged its tail because it was happy. Oh, says the behaviorist. How do you know the dog is happy? Do you have some insight into the dog's head that I don't know about? How do you know the dog? You don't know the dog is happy. You know external behavior. You know this. All right? Pat dog's head. Dog wag tail. Done. That's what you know. You know that if you pat the dog's head, the dog's tail will wag. Stop. Do not go into the middle there. You have no business discussing the emotions of your dog. Now that I've got dogs, I'll tell you, I can't help myself. All right, I know what makes them happy. Right? Happy when you give them a treat. So John Watson is developing this idea that psychology should be 100% based on observable behavior, nothing else. But he's in a situation where he's trying to publish an article where and the article it was called Psychology as a Behaviorist Views It. And he's trying and he's trying and he's trying, and it's getting rejected. Well, it turns out that the most powerful journal at this time in psychology was in fact published in his own department. It is his own department chair is rejecting him. Well, it turns out this guy, Baldwin, gets caught in a whorehouse. Okay. He's get caught in a whorehouse with his pants down. And oh, the shame, the shame. He has to resign in shame. And so now John Watson all of a sudden gets promoted up to become the head of the department at Johns Hopkins University and the editor of the most powerful journal in America. What do you think the first article was that came out in the next edition? Psychology as a behaviorist views it. Okay. And then what's really, really interesting is that then John Watson ends up having to resign in shame later because he has an affair with Rosalie Rayner here, his graduate student. Okay. He marries one student and marries Mary Watson, and then later on has an affair with her, ends up marrying her, and he is now in absolute shame, can't get a job in anywhere in academics. And so he finally lowers himself. And do you know who's the only person that would write a letter of recommendation for John Watson? Titchener. The only one. Nobody else would write him a letter. He ended up selling rubber boots. Okay. But the joke is, he ended up a multi-millionaire because he went into advertising. He took the principles of psychology, moved them over to advertising, and made his millions. All right. Because he found very simple. He found this one thing that set him off. He says, you know, you take smokers, and smokers are very what they call brand loyal. They have a very specific brand, and they will only smoke their brand. Okay. But here's the thing, says Watson. If you take smokers and you blindfold them and you give them two different cigarettes, they cannot pick out their own cigarette. They do not know their own brand. So there is nothing about the taste of that cigarette that's like one is better than the other. Okay? So why are these people so fiercely loyal to one brand over another? And that's it. And he takes that idea and he makes multi-millions. Okay? Very cool. John Watson, though he was extreme in his behaviorism, was taken to the far extreme with B.F. Skinner. B.F. Skinner was even more rigid, so rigidly behavioristic. And it's just like, you cannot introspect, period. And if it's not repeatable, you shouldn't do it. If you can't see it, if you can't quantify it, if you can't verify it, don't study it. Okay. And so B.F. Skinner was a dominant force in psychology for a lot of years. He really, really controlled the discipline. And I mean, he was almost dead. He had leukemia. He knew he was dying. He knew he was dead. And it was a week before his death. And he gets out in front of the American Psychological Association. And he says, there will never be a scientific study of the mind. Cognition can never be studied scientifically. And ironically, one of the most science-based areas of psychology is in fact cognition. Okay. I mean, he saw that cognition was coming to dominate the field, and he fiercely rejected. He said, you cannot study cognition in a behavioral way, therefore you have no business looking at it. Damn, man. And I love me some Skinner because B.F. Skinner taught a guy named Herrnstein, Richard Herrnstein. Richard Herrnstein taught somebody named Howie Racklin, and Howie Racklin taught me. So I am absolutely not just a behavioral laboratory, but the behavioral laboratory. Huh? And so, ironically, there's the pigeons, and you see him with his pigeon. And so I heard straight from Howie's mouth that B.S. Skinner himself, except on very, very rare occasions where it was like a demonstration, he never touched the pigeons because he had such a severe allergy to the pigeon dander. All right. And I can see how you can get a pigeon dander allergy in a hurry when you work with them. All right. Very cool. Some other areas of psychology would be more in the more in see this is really a science-based areas of psychology. This would be more therapy based. And so Abraham Maslow, followed up by Carl Rogers. And again, we're gonna come across these people at different points in the semester as we get to different topics, especially when we get to therapy or personality. And Abraham Maslow puts together the idea of self actualization, which is a powerful idea. And he says, every human being is born with a purpose, born with a reason to exist. And so what happens is that we are motivated to achieve our purpose in life, our reason for existence. It gets us up in the morning and says the reason that somebody might have bad mental health is because they something is blocking their ability to achieve their purpose in life. Okay, he calls it self-actualization, but your purpose in life. And so they in the humanistic psychologists such as Maslow and Rogers, they treat mental health treatment like this. They don't have patients. A patient implies that somebody's sick. No, we don't have patients. They say they have clients. Okay, these are people whose life situation is preventing them from achieving their purpose. So the job is not to fix the individual, but to find out what it is that is preventing this person from achieving their purpose. All right. So it's not my thing. I'm a scientist. This ain't my thing, but it is. It is. Huh? So clearly, there are other areas of psychology. And in fact, one of the other major areas of psychology that was a real blowback to Titchener, and we'll come across these in chapter 5 or 6, I don't remember which, would be the Gestalt psychologists. And these are primarily Germans. And they said, okay, here's the problem is that going back to the analogy of chemistry here, that he wants to create the periodic table of the elements, right, and break down conscious experience into its smallest components. And they argue that, you know what, if you take hydrogen, or 2 parts hydrogen, H2O, so 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen, you get what? What do you get? Thank you very much, John. Water. So hydrogen is a gas. Oxygen is a gas. Water is a liquid. Oh, okay. So if you try to study water as nothing but hydrogen and oxygen, you would lose the story. You would miss the entire thing. And that is what the Gestalt psychologist felt is what Titchener was doing. He was breaking things down into their elementary components and structures, and by doing so, missing the larger story. And the Gestalt psychologists had as their main point, the whole is more than the sum of its parts. Okay? If you take a bunch of parts and put them together, the thing that emerges is different than the parts added together. Okay? So we'll definitely come back to them when we talk about perception. Okay? But modern psychology has some different areas to it, shall we say. We find some major areas. Obviously, neuroscience is a big one, right? Neuroscience and biological psychology and an understanding of how biology interacts with behaviors. And yeah, I teach neurosciences well, I taught it just last fall. So neuroscience is a big area of psychology. Social psychology is a field of psychology. And again, we're going to come back to this in like chapter 11 or something further towards the end of the semester. And so it's a branch of psychology that studies for, in a simple way, that human behavior, human beings, human thinking, human thought process, human behaviors, they become different when you're around other people. Okay. When you're around other people, you just change, you become different. So again, we're going to have a whole chapter on this, but it's like if you're in an elevator all by yourself and you got a really itch up your nose, you're going to take care of that thing, aren't you? Oh my God, I got that on camera. But if you're in the elevator and your nose itches and there's other people, you're going to sort of politely brush the side of it and hope like heck that it takes care of that itch, right? Because we just change when other people are around. And that's what social psychology really studies, okay? So it studies things like conformity, prejudice, social relations. In fact, if you've ever taken a sociology class, you can see that there's a good bit of overlap between what is studied in sociology and social psychology. Another area, and this is another one I taught just last fall, was cognitive psychology. And cognitive psychology is this study of like memory processes, how attention works. Cognitive psychology also studies things such as language, intelligence, things of this nature. And I believe entire unit 2 is all cognitive psychology, okay? Because we're going to study about sensation, perception, learning, language development, intelligence, all different branches of cognition. Okay? So it's a pretty powerful idea. So I'm at a good point here where I'm gonna kind of call it a day because I don't want to bring in too much. I don't want to move too much into the next part. So let's just quick make positive. We're clear that we have, I have opened this discussion forum back up so that you can modify if you don't like what you got for a grade. Open this one so that you can perhaps, based on what you learned from my feedback from the first one, either complete this discussion forum or rethink what you've submitted. Okay. And finally, that pre-test for extra credit, it is ultimately optional. It is your choice, but it is probably the easiest extra credit opportunity you will be coming across. So maybe now's the time. But all 3 of these are closing tonight at midnight. Okay. I got it. There were some new people. All right. So we'll finish up chapter 1. And so now, after you have completed the chapter 1 discussion forum, I'm hoping that come Thursday, I'll be able to get more. I know on Collaborate, it's really hard to go back and forth, especially in a freshman level class. But after having done this chapter 1 discussion forum, you all will have something to contribute on Thursday. All right? So, got any questions before we log her out for the day and go eat some lunch? Anybody, any questions before we lunch it? All right. Was it, is that Sheila? Sheila? It is Sheila, right?
It's Shayla.
Shayla. All right. I'm getting these things. I'm wrong. All right. All right. Namaya. Got it. Shayla. Maybe, did I even write that down? No, I didn't. Okay. So I will see you all on Thursday, and y'all are going to be ready to be a two-way conversation. All right. Very cool. Have a good day.